The scream didn't sound human. It came from somewhere behind the motel, thin, dragged out, as if the cold itself was crying. I froze with the car door half open. Christmas lights blinking weak red and green across the cracked asphalt. Snow fell in slow, lazy spirals, soundless. No wind. No traffic. Just that scream, swallowed by the dark. The motel sign flickered above me. No vacancy then, no then nothing. I stood there, keys shaking in my hand, telling myself it was an animal. A fox. A drunk. Anything but what my chest already knew. Inside the office, a single bulb buzzed. The register was open. No clerk. No bell. A guest book lay open on the counter. Pages yellowed and brittle. Names filled it. Dozens, written in the same handwriting. All dated December 25th. Different years. Same room number. Room 6. Behind the wall, something knocked once. Slow. Deliberate. Not asking to be let out. Waiting. And then a voice, right behind my ear, whispered, "You came back." I turned, and the lights went out. The motel was not supposed to exist. That was the first thought that settled into my mind as I stood beneath the flickering sign. Snow soaking through my shoes, engine ticking as it cooled behind me. I had driven this highway before, dozens of times, maybe more, and there had never been a motel here. Just trees. Just darkness. Just road. Yet here it stood. A single-story sprawl of concrete rooms arranged in a crooked U-shape, doors facing inward toward a small courtyard buried under untouched snow. Christmas lights clung weakly to the rooflines, blinking out of sync as if struggling to remember their purpose. Red. Green. Red. Pause. Dark. The air was unnaturally quiet. No wind. No insects. No distant traffic. Even the snowfall seemed muted, like it was happening behind glass. I shut my car door, and the sound echoed too loudly, bouncing off the walls and returning to me thinner, wrong. For a moment, I had the sharp, irrational feeling that I had interrupted something. The office light buzzed. That low electrical hum crawled under my skin as I pushed the door open. Warmth hit my face, stale and heavy, like a room that had been sealed for years and opened only for me. The smell followed, damp carpet, old paper, and something faintly sweet beneath it, almost like rotting pine. "Hello." My voice sounded out of place, like dialogue in the wrong scene. The office was empty. No clerk. No chair pulled back. No coat hanging by the heater. Just a counter, a bell coated in dust, and a guest book lying open as if someone had just stepped away. I didn't ring the bell. I don't know why. Something in me didn't want to announce myself. Behind the counter, a wall of key hooks stood nearly bare. One key remained. 6. The number was etched into tarnished brass, edges worn smooth by countless hands. I hesitated before touching it, a faint pressure blooming in my chest, like the moment just before remembering a bad dream. My fingers closed around the key. Cold. Too cold. As I turned away, my eyes caught the guest book. I told myself I was just curious, just killing time while the storm raged outside, but when I leaned closer, my stomach tightened. Every name was written in the same handwriting. Different surnames. Different initials. Same looping strokes. Same pressure. Every date was December 25th. I flipped back through the pages, heart slowly accelerating. The years stretched backward, 2021, 2009, 1994, 1977. Each Christmas marked by another name, another stay. Every entry ended the same way. Room 6. A noise came from somewhere behind the office wall. Not loud. Not sudden. A soft knock. 1. I straightened, holding my breath. The silence that followed felt deliberate, like something waiting to see how I would react. I didn't move. The knock came again, closer this time. Slower. My mouth felt dry as I stepped back from the wall. Is someone there? No answer. The knocking stopped. The hum of the light grew louder, then flickered. Shadows crawled along the corners of the room, stretching and shrinking in a way that didn't match the bulb's movement. I turned toward the door, suddenly desperate for fresh air, for the honest violence of the storm. That's when I noticed the photograph. It hung crooked behind the counter, framed in cracked wood. The motel, years, decades younger. Fresh paint, full parking lot, families standing arm in arm beneath bright Christmas decorations. Smiling faces. Every face had been scratched out. Deep gouges ruined the glass, as if someone had attacked it with a blade again and again, unable to stop. I left the office without another look. Outside, the snow had thickened, swallowing my footprints almost as soon as I made them. The courtyard lights cast a sickly yellow glow, barely reaching the ground. Doors lined the walls, identical and expressionless, their numbers peeling. Room 6 sat at the far corner. The walk felt longer than it should have been. With every step, the sense of being watched sharpened, pressing between my shoulder blades. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone standing behind me. There was no one, just doors. I unlocked room 6 and stepped inside. The room was warm, clean, impossibly so. The bed was neatly made, corners tucked tight. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the storm entirely. No dust, no smell of age. It felt prepared. I locked the door. The click of the bolt echoed too sharply in the small space. I set my bag down slowly, listening. The silence here was thicker, heavier, as if the room itself were holding its breath. When I turned toward the bed, my reflection caught in the darkened TV screen. For a split second, it looked like someone else was standing behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Then the sound came again. Not from the door. From the wall behind the bed. A single knock. Low. Careful. Deliberate. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stepped closer, every instinct screaming at me to back away instead. Another knock followed. Then a whisper seeped through the wall, thin and trembling, layered with more voices beneath it. Don't sleep. The lights went out. And in the sudden darkness, something shifted inside the room with me. The first few hours were unbearable. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not with the knocking. Not with the whispers that now moved through the walls like crawling fingers. Room 6 had a strange way of magnifying sound. A snowflake landing on the window sounded like a hammer strike. The hum of the heater became a chorus of distant voices. I pressed my ear against the wall behind the bed. At first, it was silence. Then, a low, wet breath, deliberate and patient. You hear them? A voice whispered from the plaster. They're waiting. I spun around. Nothing. Just the room. The bed. The locked door. My own trembling reflection in the TV screen. The storm outside thickened. Snow piled against the windows, distorting the courtyard light into sickly halos. I tried to leave the room, tried to run back to the office, but the hallway stretched unnaturally. Doors I'd passed on the way in now appeared closer, further, as if the space itself had begun to twist. Room numbers changed when I blinked. I started to notice the small things first, objects slightly out of place. A chair turned toward me when I wasn't looking. A phone on the counter in the office that had been dead now softly ringing. Shadows moving against the walls in patterns that made no sense. Then came the neighbors. They appeared first at the windows. Faces pressed against frosted glass, eyes hollow, smiles too wide. They whispered in voices like wind through dead leaves. Don't sleep. Not here. Not tonight. When I opened the door, they vanished. Or perhaps they were never there. I began to understand the pattern. The guest book. The scratched-out photograph. Every name tied to room 6. Every December 25th. Every Christmas night, the motel claimed someone. Not physically. Not in the violent sense, but the soul of the traveler, their memory, their presence, became part of the walls. The furniture. The air. The very structure itself. I tried to rationalize it. Some family curse, a ritual, old caretaker tricks. My mind clung to explanations, but the evidence stacked itself with each passing hour. By midnight, the motel was alive. Hallway lights flickered, following me when I walked. Rooms seemed to shift positions. The walls exhaled. Voices whispered my name in tones that were not mine. And behind the walls, the knocks came again. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. And then the voices started to speak in unison. "You're next." I questioned my sanity. I tried to leave. Tried to call for help, but the storm had drowned the road. The snow was impossible to cross. And when I peered through the window, the world outside seemed frozen, empty. But only until movement caught my eye. Figures. Slowly emerging. Old cars from decades past, engine silent. Wheels crunching against snow that shouldn't be there. People. Families. Couples. A man carrying a wrapped gift. Their steps unnatural, stiff, measured, their faces too still. Watching me. Waiting. One of them knocked at my door. "Sir, help," a frail old woman's voice pleaded. "You stayed here before. You know the rules." I stepped back. My mind raced. I don't know." She smiled too widely. "You do." And just like that she was gone. The caretaker arrived next. He was tall, pale as the snow, eyes hollow yet calm. "You can leave," he said. His hand rested on my shoulder. Cold, unyielding. "But only if you give it someone else." A replacement. A choice. That was the rule. Behind him, the other guests emerged into the hallways, silent, smiling, wrong. Their presence pressed the air in my lungs. Time became a blur. The motel had its own clock, its own logic. Doors led to rooms that weren't there before. The floor tilted subtly, just enough to unbalance me without notice. Flashbacks began to invade. Childhood memories, road trips, wrong turns on snowy highways. Faces of strangers I had passed on Christmas nights, their eyes flashing for a split second with recognition. Every memory felt like it had been manipulated, directed toward this one place. The walls spoke again. This time not whispers. Words etched themselves onto surfaces. The bathroom mirror fogged even without moisture. Letters traced by invisible fingers. They remember. They wait. Choose or stay. I understood the truth fully in that moment. The motel did not hunt. It did not take by force. It waited for travelers to arrive in desperation, isolation, exhaustion. And when they arrived, they had a choice. Leave a part of themselves to survive, or stay, and become a permanent fixture of the motel's world. I began to see them, reflections in mirrors, shadows under the door, whispers in the walls. All those who came before, trapped in endless Christmas nights, watching, waiting, silently guiding me toward my fate. By 3 a.m., my mind teetered on the edge. I questioned every perception. Hallways bent impossibly. Voices answered before I spoke. The snow outside moved in impossible ways, piling where no wind could have carried it. And then came the final warning. A whisper louder than before, right behind my ear. "You already know." I stumbled back. Heart hammering, sweat freezing on my skin. The knocking grew impatient, more insistent. The walls themselves seemed to lean inward, confining me. The guest book beckoned from the desk, pages fluttering despite no breeze. All around me, the motel pulsed. Alive, hungry, patient, and inevitable. The choice loomed before me. Stay awake through the night and risk the psychological unraveling, or submit, and become part of the endless memory loop of Christmas travelers trapped forever in the motel's walls. I backed toward the bed, clutching my bag, trying to reconcile reason with reality. And from behind the walls, a single phrase echoed, almost comforting, almost cruel. "You belong here eventually." The motel had claimed my attention, my sanity, my understanding. And in the dead hours before Christmas morning, the game of choice, of survival, began in earnest. Every knock, every whisper, every shadow was a thread pulling me toward the truth. The motel didn't need to force you. It only needed you to remember, to notice, to arrive. And once you did, it would not let you go. By the time the night crept toward 4 a.m., I was no longer sure what was real. The motel had fully come alive. Hallways bent impossibly. Doors appeared where none should exist, and the air itself carried whispers that weren't mine but seemed to know my every thought. The knocking behind room 6's walls had become a relentless rhythm. echoing in my chest as if my own heart had synchronized with it. Each tap was a reminder, a summons, a countdown. I had tried to leave. Twice. The exit doors led me back into endless hallways, each lined with doors that weren't there before. Windows revealed courtyards filled with snow and figures. People from decades past, frozen mid-step. Some held gifts. Some simply stared. All waited. Watching. Judging. Expecting. Then came the caretaker. He appeared silently, standing at the threshold of my door. His face was pale, almost translucent, eyes empty yet piercing. He didn't speak at first. He only watched, and in that gaze, I understood the cruel truth. He was not a person. He was the motel's will made flesh. "You can leave," he said finally, voice calm, controlled, almost tender. "But only if you give it someone else." I shook my head. I don't understand." He stepped closer, and the walls seemed to pulse with anticipation. "You already do. That's why you're here." From the hallway, the other guests emerged. Silent, too perfect, grotesque in their stillness. Their smiles were wide but empty, their eyes reflecting years of frozen Christmases. Each step they took toward me made the floor shift subtly beneath my feet. Time itself was bending. Seconds stretched into minutes. Minutes collapsed into seconds. The knocking behind the wall became louder, violent, as if the entire room were alive and breathing against me. I pressed my ear to the plaster. The whispers were frantic now, overlapping. "Don't leave. Stay. Stay awake." I understood then. The motel did not hunt. It did not kill. It claimed only those who arrived unprepared, unguarded, lonely, exhausted. And I had arrived exactly like that. I backed into the center of room 6. The bed, once safe, now seemed alien. The curtains twitched despite no wind. The shadows moved independently, gathering and separating like they were thinking, observing, waiting. The caretaker advanced. "It wants you," he said. "The motel does not forgive hesitation." My mind screamed, panic overtaking reason. I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and swung it at him. My hands passed through air. The caretaker did not flinch. The walls began to crack. The mirrors fogged. Letters appeared as if traced by invisible fingers. "You belong here." Then, from every direction at once, the whispers became voices, all the trapped travelers speaking in unison. "You are next." I ran for the door. I tried to leave. I ran through hallways that twisted into themselves, doors opening into rooms filled with shadows of my own past. Faces I recognized but didn't remember knowing. The motel was showing me every wrong turn, every mistake, every lonely Christmas that had led me here. And then the walls collapsed inward. The floor buckled. I fell, and for a brief moment I felt weightless, suspended between floors, corridors, reflections, and time itself. The caretaker's voice came from all directions. "Choose." I realized the choice had always been mine, to flee and leave someone else in my place, or to stay awake, to fight the motel's inevitability, and risk becoming another ghost in its walls. Desperation seized me. I grabbed the guest book, flipping through pages, searching for a loophole. All the names were there. All the years. All the Christmases. And one final, empty line at the end, waiting. The motel pulsed with life. Shadows crawled across the ceiling, down the walls. A hand, or something like it, emerged from the plaster behind the bed. Fingers thin and gray, stretching impossibly. I could see the faint outlines of faces trapped within the hand, mouths opening and closing silently. "Sleep," a chorus of voices whispered. "Join us." I understood. The motel didn't need to trap me physically. It trapped my mind, my memories, my choices, my soul. I ran for room 6's bed, heart hammering. Every step felt like running through molasses, each second dragging into eternity. I grasped the edge of the mattress, pressed my palms into the cold sheets, and locked the door behind me. Silence. For a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, a single knock, soft, deliberate, echoed through the wall behind the bed. I curled into myself, unable to breathe, eyes wide. The whispers receded. The caretaker was gone. The other guests vanished. Time began to flow normally again. But I knew. The motel had not released me. It had only paused, waiting for me to make my next move. To choose. And room 6, once a simple room, was now a trap disguised as safety. I could leave, but I would always carry the motel with me. The scratches in the photo, the ghostly knocks, the whispered warnings. And every Christmas, when snow fell silent and the world seemed empty, I would hear the voices again, waiting, reminding me, because the motel does not forgive. The motel does not forget. And the night, it is eternal. Morning came like a lie. The snow had stopped, leaving the world washed in silence and blinding white. From the road, the motel looked abandoned, its crooked sign sagging, the bulbs dead. No flicker. No movement. Nothing. I walked the lot cautiously, heart still hammering, breath forming clouds in the cold air. Footprints behind me stretched and faded, as if I had never been there. The windows were dark, empty. And yet, I knew. Inside, the doors were open. Room numbers peeling, curtains swaying slightly in a breeze I could not feel. Room 6 waited at the far end of the corridor. The bed was perfectly made. The guest book lay open on the counter in the office, the last line blank. My name hovered in memory, unpenned but inevitable. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but the phone line was dead. My phone, my lifeline, had died in the storm hours before. I was alone, and I knew with an awful certainty that leaving did not mean escaping. As I walked past the empty rooms, shadows shifted in the corners of my vision. Faces flickered in mirrors, half recognizable. My own reflection seemed wrong, hollowed, thinner, like a version of me that had stayed before. I shivered. The caretaker did not appear. The guests did not follow. But I could feel them. Behind walls. Under floors. In the creaking of the stairs, the soft brush of cold air against my neck. They were waiting. Watching. Patient. Eternal. I left the motel by the road I had entered, careful to retrace my steps, but the world had changed. The highway stretched differently. Trees blocked familiar turns. The road curved impossibly. And every Christmas ornament, every glowing streetlight I passed seemed to hum with the memory of that night. I reached home eventually, but the warmth of doors, the smell of food, the comfort of walls, none of it reached me fully. I could still hear the whispers. Still feel the knocks in my skull, the soft, deliberate pressure behind my eyes. Room 6 had followed me. Weeks later I tried to speak of it. To tell someone. My friends laughed, or dismissed it as stress, exhaustion, a vivid dream. But I knew better. Every Christmas night, I dream of the motel. The lights blinking in crooked rhythm. The guest book open. The whispers calling my name. And sometimes in the corner of the dream, I see my reflection in a mirror, thinner, paler, staring back at me with hollow eyes. I never go near the highways that lead north. I avoid storms. I drive past any motel, any roadside light, knowing what waits. But I know it's only a matter of time before the next snow falls, the next lonely traveler wanders, and the cycle begins again. Room 6 waits for all who arrive unprepared. It does not forgive. It does not forget. And it never ends. The final warning came one silent Christmas night when the snow fell quiet and heavy. A knock, soft, deliberate, behind the walls of my mind. I froze. It whispered my name. And I knew. I would never be alone again. The motel had followed me. The night had claimed me. And in its silence, I understood the terrible truth. You cannot escape what waits for you. Not really. And when the world grows quiet, when the snow falls, when the lights blink and die, it is always there, patient, watching, waiting, for you, for me, for anyone who dares travel alone on Christmas night.